18th meeting of the Conestoga Valley Board of School Directors. Will the secretary please take attendance?
9 members present.
Okay, then we have a quorum. The agenda has been posted. I need a motion to approve it.
Pledge the flag.
Oh, I've skipped the pledge. I skip something every time at the beginning, don't I?
We keep it consistent.
It's easy to keep me on.
Let's join it.
Keep me on.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have an agenda. I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We will start with board commendations. Congratulations to the Husky Middle School Students of the Month for November and December. November Students of the Month in 7th grade are Madison Gonzalez, Peyton Levering, Nadia Campbell, Cameron Bear, Lena Martin, and Caleb Martin. For 8th grade, they were Alex Christopher, Angela Loper, Michael Lapp, Kane Kirby, Devin Hershey, Kaylana Davis. For December in 7th grade, they were Abby Wheeler, Rowan Bagley, Meredith Heller, Lucas Tulumak, Connor Boyd, Noah Scott. In 8th grade, they are Emily Burkhart, Trey Forney, Riley Fiddler, Dev Marwaha, David Berkey, and Michael Horst. Congratulations to the CV wrestling team for their noteworthy performance at the program's annual Wrestling Holiday Classic on December 29th and 30th, as they placed 5th out of 27 teams. The top 5 finish tied the team's best finish in the history of the Classic. In addition, senior Keaton Fisher became the program's 5th ever champion at the event and the first since 2013 under current coach Lucas Ortiz. The Buckskins boasted 7 medals in total, which tied for the 2nd most placed winners in the history of the event. Those people are Keaton Fisher, Luke Morley, Xander Ryder, Mohamed Karayev, Nate Kirshner, Luke Needham, and Jonathan Lopez. Congratulations to the following elite musicians as they performed at the 2022 LLMEA County Chorus Festival this past weekend at Anvic-Cleona High School. Natalie Booth, Will Burgess, and Bailey Post-Rayburn. It was the first in-person festival for any chorus member since 2020. Congratulations to CV High School senior Marshall Hershey, as he was named the IU13's Materials Handling and Logistics Transition Program Employee of the Month for December 2021. Marshall was honored for his outstanding attendance and solid academic, technical, and employable ability skills. His work with Materials Handling and Logistics Transition Program is part of the IU's Work Immersion Program. Congratulations to all of these students and their advisors for their achievements. Superintendent's comments.
Thank you, Madam President. I do have a few items of interest. January is Board Appreciation Month. It's our time to thank those who continue to serve and those who are beginning their journey as public servants. For those who have been on the board during these last 2 years, to say it was challenging is an understatement. For the current board of 9, yay, the journey continues along with unknown challenges and successes, and most importantly, the ever-present focus on why we are all here, our children. To keep you warm in these winter months, enjoy being wrapped up in one of our buckskin blankets, and when you're out and about, feel free to wear the t-shirt proudly. Thank you for your commitment to CV. Now on to some informational items, and all are found within the superintendent's report, which is on the consent agenda. You'll notice 3 items highlighted in red. That means that was a late addition due to paperwork coming in after we posted. First, we've added Francis Dennis to our list of retirees. You'll notice teachers have until the end of the month to submit their retirement to be eligible for the early notification retirement incentive, so we still may have some more forthcoming. Mrs. Dennis brings our total number of teachers retiring this year to 8. Quantifying the over 236 cumulative years of dedication to the students of CV only scratches the surface of what these outstanding educators have given to our children. From kindergarten through high school, these professionals have followed a calling to make a positive difference in the lives of every child every day without exception. So when you see them out and about, make sure to stop and thank them for the work they have done. And since they'll be here through the end of the school year, feel free to send them an email of gratitude. I'm sure it will be appreciated. All right, let me get down here. Second item in red in the superintendent's report is the clerical correction for Stephanie Dorsheimer. While it doesn't seem to stack up to the 236 years mentioned above, Mrs. Dorsheimer has proven invaluable in her work with both the students requiring itinerant autistic support and those needing emotional support this year. So we just wanted to fix that clerical error. And finally, on the superintendent's report is the addition of 4 more future teachers to be able to substitute right now through the Act 86 program while they are working on obtaining their teaching degree. It's always a pleasure to see the new faces of public education coming on board as we celebrate the retirement of those who provided meaningful and engaging learning opportunities for so long. I'm going to slide back again, and letter E there. You'll also notice on the superintendent's report the resignation of head football coach Jared Novak. Coach is another name for educator, and Coach Novak has made a definite impact on those associated with the program. As we conduct a search for the new head coach, Dina Henry, who is our athletic director, is forming a committee of coaches, administrators, and athletic trainers to conduct a series of interviews before a final interview with me, Mrs. Henry, and Dr. Smith, the high school principal. We're hoping to have a final candidate to bring to the board for approval at the March 21st board meeting at the latest. Another educator moving on, letter A there. Moving on to other opportunities is Dr. Sally Bredeman, the principal at Smoketown. Dr. Bredeman will be more formally recognized next month as Smoketown will be presenting the monthly school update to the board. Regarding the search and hiring of a new principal for Smoketown, Dr. Jill Kozer will work with our HR department to post for the position, and we will continue to follow the established process for hiring new building principals. My cabinet and I will conduct a first round of interviews, followed by a second round, which is round-robin interview of 3 candidates to be interviewed by a select group of parents, teachers, and administrators. From there, the final 2 or 3 candidates will be interviewed by the board with the hope that the final recommendation will be made at the board meeting on March 21st. That's all for tonight, Madam President.
Thank you. Mrs. Martin, do we have any correspondence?
None this evening.
Thank you. Are there any board comments of recent activity? If not, I will call on Dr. Graybill to introduce his people for the student report.
Great, Dr. Z, is it okay if we're sort of in this area over here?
That's fine.
Yeah,
Just
I'll find my crew
just
up
make sure
here.
they're close enough and loud enough that the board can hear.
Okay, you guys can line up over here. Got a great group of 5th grade leaders, along with the kindergarten teacher, Miss Albee. And we're gonna talk a little bit about STEM and science and things we're doing with our new spaces at Brownstown. I'm personally very excited. We're partnering with the IU for a journey that's beginning actually this year, moving into next year, taking a look at the STEM and next generation science standards. So I've got a representative group of teachers from every building, 1 teacher rep from each grade level at Brownstown. And we're gonna be working to identify some standard experiences, design activities that can be pushed out district-wide. So we've got these great spaces, we're sort of dabbling with it, and wanted to kind of highlight some things we're doing there. So Miss Albee has been an awesome addition to Brownstown. I believe her kindergarten kids had a little hand in this video that we're gonna show today, so I'm gonna turn it over to her and to our group of 5th graders. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. So I am the kindergarten teacher, and I was able to work with these fabulous 5th graders. I wish I could take the credit for this, but all I did was put together the pictures, videos, and then I met with them during their recess time, and they put together a script for every single part, and then I had my kindergarten students record voiceovers, and my kids came up with what they were going to say themselves. So some of these projects happened all the way back in September, and the 5th graders and kindergartners were able to remember what they learned without having to reference anything. So that is something that is definitely worth noting.
We're gonna do the video now, or? Okay.
Thank you.
Actually, you guys are gonna introduce it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Here's our video about STEM. Science, technology,
Engineering,
math.
There we go.
Now we're ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
At first, it was hard for us to make the slimes more sticky instead of runny. We had to add borax, hot water, and glue. It got all over the table and the ground. I learned that slime is really messy, and I learned the importance of following directions.
Oh, it's warm from the hot water, maybe. Ew. Gross. So, the difference of the reindeer on a string, it goes in a straight line. The one without the one without a string goes in a squiggly line. Answer's not there? All right, count down. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Look how close you were.
The ingredients were yeast, water, root beer extract, and lots of sugar. We had to let it ferment for a week. In the process of making it, we made a mistake when taking the yeast out of the bag and had to scoop it off the table. In the end, some people thought it tasted good, and others thought it tasted gross. Every Monday, except for the first Monday of the library cycle, we do Makerspace Monday. We use things like wingamajigs, strawberries, and kivas.
In library, we made catapult from library, and we used pom-poms for the blasters, and we made it out of sticks, spoons, pom-poms, and rubber bands.
When we got to school, we put a plastic golf ball on a stick. We had to shine a flashlight on it to copy the moon phases. There was a station where we had to eat an Oreo to match each moon phase.
Right, you guys tell me what you did here? What did you start with?
So basically, I just had the whole pile, and I just almost card and just deal them out to everybody.
Okay, how many did you start with?
I started with 1. Or 28.
You started with 28, okay.
Yeah, kind of like base 10. Everybody got 7 cards, and all of us actually got 7 cards.
Okay,
Except the deluxe cards.
nice. In 3rd and 4th grades, we've been working a lot with division and the digibucks that we have in the STEM lab. So students are able to come together and actually use them to figure out problems. So you guys started with 32 blocks, right?
Yeah.
And then what did you do?
And then we divided it in 8.
Okay, so you divided it, each person has the same amount?
Yeah.
So there's 4 students, and you had 32 blocks total. How many do each of you have now? You each have 8. So 32 divided by 4 equals what?
8.
Very cool, thanks guys.
As we leave the Polar Express, we played learning games in our pajamas. We kept out word with bells. Cut trains in number order. And we built words.
We made cookies in library, kindness club, and another day after school. We made a lot of different cookies after school one day for the men's mission and kindness club. We got to frost and decorate them. Other classrooms also used the ovens to make cookies. Overall, the cookies tasted delicious.
In library, we read a book bear came along. We made rafts out of popsicle sticks. We put rafts in water to see if they could float, and we put bears on it.
In library, we had to build bird beaks after reading a book. We had to choose from 15 different birds. We had to build a beak based off the bird we picked. We had to pick up the most amount of spaghetti to win a bookmark. I planned a big beak to make, but I just took a piece of paper and taped it at the top to scoop up the spaghetti.
We used a hairdryer and a ping pong ball. We used the energy from the hairdryer to blow the ball in the air, but gravity was pulling the ball down, so the Air Force had to push it up.
We used sticks and blocks to make gingerbread houses.
We had to add salt to water and take the temperature to see what happened. This was tricky at first to know how much salt to add. Afterwards, we had a cup with salt and one without salt. After we added the salt, the temperature went down but never froze. The temperature went below 32 degrees. We were surprised it didn't freeze.
We had to make series and parallel circuits with Play-Doh, lights, and wires, and a 9-volt battery. We had to connect the negative and positive side to two different pieces of Play-Doh, then connect the Play-Doh with the lights for the
Thank you for watching our video. Do you have any
Awesome.
questions?
What was your favorite part?
Probably the slime.
The slime. Good stuff. Kick your own full slime.
All I know is I gotta start all over and go back to elementary school. That is cool. Thank you.
And it was Lucas and Sebastian, Brianna, and Riley, so appreciate you guys coming out on a non-school day, so.
Yeah, that's
Thanks,
it.
guys.
Thank you guys.
Well done.
Very well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brownstown has our first STEM lab, but that's the good news for them. But for the other schools, it means what we learned about the configuration there, we can improve on as we put them in our other elementary schools.
And we can excuse the students if they wanna. Because you really do have school tomorrow.
What?
I know.
My kids say it's a rumor.
This is the first point in the meeting where there's a place for public comment. Is there anyone from the public that would like to make a comment to the board this evening? If not, are there any comments from CDEA?
If I could just say just real quickly, I love your help with helping us with the substitute shortage. Anything you can do to help us. It's really been an issue and having a negative influence on how we can serve the kids and community with these shortages. We do have a list of ideas, so if you ever want to meet with us, we'd love to share.
Okay, thank you. Comments from any other employee groups? If not, we have a consent agenda that's longer than usual, but I will take a motion to approve it.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We'll have a roll call vote. Does the secretary take care of that, please?
Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Mrs. Kapka?
Aye.
Mr. Dillman?
Aye.
Mr. Gensel?
Aye.
Mr. Hurst?
Aye.
Dr. Martin?
Aye.
Ms. Trowbridge?
Aye.
Mr. Benigno?
Aye.
Mrs. Groff?
Aye. Our next item is on the action discussion agenda, and Mrs. Heatherly Fletcher will give us a budget update.
So the documents that you have attached tonight are really just a reflection of what we showed you last week. Couple of minor changes. One is on the 5-year projections. If you noticed last week, The trends were grayed out, those columns. We've updated those, so that's all completed. So you can look how those numbers flow through. As promised last week, we also attached what I called the PDE 2028, which is the form that the Department of Education has us complete that all the other school districts use. And as I had mentioned last week, the one difference between my 5-year projection spreadsheet and the PDE document is that on mine, when you go to the expense side, you kind of see it broken down into salaries and benefits. When you look at the PDE 2028, it's more educationally focused, so it's going to show the instructional costs versus the support costs and not broken down into kind of those salary and benefit categories. So the totals all match, but it's just 2 different ways of looking at it. So last week we went through everything in detail. Those were just the updates for tonight. The 2 action items we do need from you tonight are the 2 documents that are attached, the resolution and then the notice. And one of them gives us the authorization to go ahead and lay the preliminary budget that we've shown you now 2 weeks in a row public. So it tells you that that has to be done 20 days before the scheduled date and at least 10 days prior to the adoption date. So we do have that scheduled to happen here at the end of the month in time for the February meeting. The February meeting is where you will actually approve that preliminary budget. And then the other document is the notice that goes with it. So I believe in the past when you've done these 2, you've done them together. So if you want to do them separately, that's fine. Or if you do them together, that's fine too. And Dr. Z has the notice up there on the screen as well, so you can see that. Really just doing what it's referring to, giving notice of the proposed preliminary budget.
And that's for vote tonight?
Asking for the vote for the resolution and the.
We can do them together if you'd like. All we have to do is make sure that we approve don't approve the notice before we approve the preliminary budget. But if they're together, I'm fine with that.
Correct, and we can separate them
Did you
in
prefer to do
February when we
Okay,
do the
well,
budget.
I've had a request to do it separately. So the first motion will be on the resolution authorizing the proposed preliminary budget.
Second.
A roll call vote?
Do we have a first? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Yep, we do.
Who was
did.
first? I did,
I did.
okay. Mr. Talley,
Second. Oh, yes.
Mrs. Kapka,
Aye.
Mr. Dillman,
Aye.
Mr. Gensel,
Aye.
Mr. Hurst,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Ms. Trowbridge,
Aye.
Mr. Benigno,
Aye.
Mrs. Crawl.
Aye. And then we will have one for posting it, right?
Correct.
Yes, please.
You may as well, you're on a run.
That's fine. I move that we approve the budget notice.
Second.
Again, roll call vote.
Mr. Talley,
Aye.
Mrs. Kapka,
Aye.
Mr. Dillman,
Aye.
Mr. Gensel,
Aye.
Mr. Hurst,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Ms. Trowbridge,
Aye.
Mr. Benigno,
Aye.
Mrs. Crawl.
Aye. And that's all that's all you need approved, okay?
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Mann, we are ready for you to review the course selection book. If I remember correctly, what is it, every 3 years or something, we do a complete overhaul of the book, but this is one of those years where we just update small
Just an
parts of
update,
it.
yeah, just minor updates.
Yeah,
You just want the changes then, sir?
Sure, that'd be great. Hello, everyone.
hi.
Yeah, as I presented last week, there were a number of new courses that were presented, and so they are now included in the booklet itself. Dr. Mensinger and her staff went through the book along with Dr. Smith. And it's a real collaborative work. I mean, it's amazing how little areas you find throughout the thing after looking at it so many times. But they've worked through it, and so the summary sheet is really just that. What are some of the things that were changed? Now there are maybe like a title or something that was updated or corrected and things of that nature, which is not included in the summary sheet here. But just to point out, the courses that we added from last week are on here, as well as just a couple of things of interest. We had a student design the cover for the book, which is something new this year. So Rachel had a student do that. As far as the changes, looking at the changes as they reflect the CV profile, and one of the don't want to call it a major change, but a change that we've talked about for a number of years is changing the terminology from general to traditional. Always get a lot of questions, like especially when students go off to colleges and so forth. Well, what's general? What's traditional? And so it just to help to clarify it. It seems to make more sense as it aligns with other institutions. So
Historically, though, didn't general have a rather pejorative implication too?
Yeah.
Like it was lesser.
right. So we made that change, which I think was appropriate. The let's see here. Anything else? That's pretty much it of the highlights. Just as Mrs. Groff indicated, the course selection booklet, we ever so often go through a major overhaul of it. The purpose of the booklet, for those of you that perhaps are new to maybe having kids going through the high school, if you haven't had students at that age yet, is to guide the course selection process, right? It has all the courses that the high school offers and all the various things that go along with that, whether it's prerequisites, pacing guides and things, not pacing guides, excuse me, prerequisites as far as like when students should be taking a certain course and so on. So parents use this a lot, students use this, are supposed to use this, along with their guidance counselors in planning their programming for the 4 years. We also use Sapphire, which I believe everyone knows. And then in Sapphire, there's a form that is filled out, which is the selection of the courses that aligns to this. And then that begins the process of scheduling and so forth. Just wanted to mention that, those of you that you're new to the process. Questions, comments, concerns?
Questions?
When can we see a picture of what the student designed for the cover?
It's on the.
Is it up there?
It is.
Very cool.
I like this catalog. And what I like about it is that some districts, when things get tough, they start to reduce the variety of classes. But we give a really nice selection to all of our students that gives people the opportunity to get a well-rounded education based upon their likes or needs.
Right.
And it's good.
Yeah.
It's a good program.
It is. And I concur.
Yeah.
Historically, that's what we've done is offer a variety to try and meet all the needs of students.
And just get students to explore and just say, this is what I think I want to do, but now I know I don't want to do this. And you can save them a lot of money on the on the back end. Are we still doing the kindergarten teacher program? Is that a class where
We
the
have
students go into the
internships.
The internships.
Yeah. If a student's interested in doing that, yeah, we have students that do internships internally. And so if it fits their schedule and they're able to do that,
That's good. That's good.
Students
That's
do
a
that.
good piece.
I think the other thing it's important to note is that these course selections are student motivated. It's what they've asked for. Not just what we think they ought to have.
Right.
It's really important to recognize it because by the time they get, halfway through high school, they pretty well know what sort of things they want to focus on.
And there's been a number of courses, and there was one I mentioned last week, was really born out of student interest. I mean, it's where it got its start.
For board work, this is the first step in deciding not just what's taught and what it's scheduled, but what our staffing needs will be. Because sometimes we find out that a certain course has fallen out of popularity.
Right.
And that therefore that releases a teacher to cover other classes.
Yep. Yep.
So, and that's still up by the end of this month or next? When do they have to have their course selection in?
It'll begin in earnest the end of this month. They start working with the middle school because we have to bring home the 8th graders. And then month of February is where it really starts to tick up. So by the end of February, we should have a fairly decent picture.
What we're doing next year.
Yeah.
Any questions, board members?
How many years out are we before an overhaul?
Well, probably another 2 or 3.
2 or 3 years? Okay. That's my question.
Yeah, because Dr. Fox did it, I want to say 3, 4 years ago.
4 years ago. Okay, all right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Henry, we have an athletic department contract.
I do. Hi, I'm Dina Henry. Nice to see everybody. So this is a proposal from Huddle. This is the video system that we use. I would say there's a lot of really great things about Huddle, but the three main benefits, I think, of this program, one is the tactical and technical knowledge and improvement that our teams use, our coaches use to help our teams improve. Being able to build a practice plan, an improvement plan for the teams and the programs. I would say another one is scouting, so being able to scout our opponents, because through Huddle, you can actually share videos from program to program. And then the third is being able to share videos and highlights with college recruiters. So any student athlete who aspires to play at the college level, this is a very easy way to get video footage of themselves out there to hundreds of schools. They just send emails with a link, and it's that easy. So those are the three main, I would say, uses of Huddle. And I used to use Huddle when I was a college basketball coach, and Huddle did not have what's called Huddle Assist now, where you can actually program it to look for a specific number on the team. So everything that I do, I shoot, I dribble, I travel, I make a mistake, it can break it down. And so my coach can sit me down and say, these are some of the things I want you to improve on. And when I used it, that didn't exist. It exists now. And so it's really great both for team improvement and individual improvement. We have 2 Huddle cameras for live streaming. We have one in each gym that the BAA actually funded for us.
That's the Buckskin Activities Alliance. It's that overarching group that supports all extracurricular activities.
And they funded that for us in the fall of 2020 when we got back to school after the stay-at-home order for COVID, because we weren't able to have spectators for a point, and then we were able to have them, but it had to be just a certain number. So we utilize those cameras for live streaming, and that is a yearly subscription. So $6,000 of the $12,200 would go to that. And then the other $6,200 is what I just explained to you, the package for all of our teams. And you can see all of the teams that are listed there that it can benefit. Anything else?
Any questions?
Do you need this approved tonight, or do you want to put it on the consent agenda?
We were hoping for it to be approved tonight, yeah.
Do you have a sense for what percentage of our sports programs use it?
Yes, I would say I can look at all the sports. So I know basketball and football use it. Both soccers use it.
It's probably
Volleyball uses it.
90% of your team activities.
Yeah, field hockey started using it more the last couple of years. Baseball and softball don't, because there's no, I shouldn't say there's no way to film. They can film. What you can do if you don't have the Huddle camera is you can film like on an iPad or something, and then they can just upload it onto the computer, but they haven't used it yet, but they certainly can. Lacrosse uses it. So, and track and field hasn't yet. So track and field, baseball, and softball are the only sports that haven't used it yet. Wrestling, I know, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but last year when we were live streaming a lot, Huddle explained to me that wrestling needed to be on a somewhat different account. I don't know why. And so Trent is getting in touch with Huddle to be able to start to use that more. So yeah, so like you said, probably 90% of the sports use it. It's great.
Are the ones that you mentioned that aren't using, are they planning on that? Because I imagine that'd be a big benefit for baseball, and a lot of them too, where you can track everything you're doing.
Right, I would imagine that it would be a big benefit. I don't know. I know that our softball coach was brand new last year. He was cleared to coach the Friday before they started on that Monday. So, that's something that I can definitely have a conversation with him about, but I know that last year he wasn't thinking about it, that being hired so quickly there right before the season. But yeah, we definitely would encourage the use of that, because you're right, it would help with their swing, with their, even down to like their lead off, making sure that they're leading off in time. For softball and things like that. So it's such a huge benefit.
Especially if it's just that one price and it covers all the sports and take advantage of it as best we can.
Absolutely.
Just benefit everybody. I think it sounds great.
Second motion? I move that we approve the huddle contract.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Mrs. Kapka? Mr. Dillman?
Aye.
Mr. Gensel?
Aye.
Mr. Hurst?
Aye.
Dr. Martin?
Aye.
Ms. Trowbridge?
Aye.
Mr. Benigno?
Aye.
Mrs. Groff?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is a reapproval of the Arbester Health and Safety Plan. This is the second renewal of this plan. I'd just like to mention that there was considerable compromise involved when we first went through this plan. It went through many changes, and it gave us what we really needed, which was structure. And that what was most important. There was direction from PDE and DOH, and we worked through developing the data. With this substance that we could rely on, we always had something to fall back on. It gave us the guidance, and we reviewed it, and it is up for reapproval this evening. Are there any comments, discussion, or are we prepared for a motion? I can sit here as long as you can.
Nothing? No? I don't wanna get run out of town.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it was how we discussed, where it's the plan itself is solid, it's the administration of the plan, which is the next piece that we're voting on.
Yes,
I think is the most
we
important.
purposely separated them,
Yeah.
so our discussion is focused where it belongs.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
flexibility
I
of the
agree.
plan as it stands, I think, in my opinion, is fine.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, I motion that we keep the plan the same.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Talley?
Yes.
Mrs. Kapka?
Aye.
Mr. Dillman?
Aye.
Mr. Gensel?
Aye.
Mr. Hurst?
Aye.
Dr. Martin?
Aye.
Ms. Trowbridge?
Aye.
Mr. Benigno?
Aye.
Mrs. Groff?
Aye. Thank you. The establishment of the positive case threshold for mandatory masking and temporary shift to virtual instruction. I will turn this over to Dr. Z to explain how we come to this.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. As part of the application of the district's health and safety plan, which was just reapproved, we're looking to set thresholds to help mitigate the spread of COVID-19 and keep CV schools open for in-person instruction, especially the threshold numbers for the shift to a temporary mandatory wearing of face coverings and for a temporary shift to online instruction. In July 2021, the board approved the establishment of the current threshold limits of active cases to be set for elementary schools, since vaccinations were not an option for children in those age groups. The numbers were set using the 2021 PDE guidelines to make a temporary shift to online instruction. So that was, Leola was 5, Brownstown was 6, Smoketown was 7, and Fritz was 8. This has averaged about 1.1% of the total school population to 1.2% of the total school population. Now, with the optional vaccine now available for all school-age children, we'd like to be consistent in establishing a threshold for a temporary 14-day wearing of a face covering. Additionally, we will consider the recent recommendation from PDE to temporary shift to online instruction. PDE has just come out with a 5% active cases over a 14-day rolling period. But ultimately, per PDE, the decision to close for any length of times remains a local decision. Schools may use other criteria to determine if suspension of in-person learning is necessary for their local school community. So since we have shifted to follow the Department of Health and CDC's guidelines from 10 days of isolation to 5 days of isolations, followed by 5 days of allowing our students back in school with a face covering, with a mask, our active case count is based off of that 5-day rolling time frame. So when you look at our numbers on the COVID dashboard, it's on a 5-day rolling time frame, not the 10 as we had originally done prior to before the 5 days were approved. So since we're using that 5-day rolling average and not the 14-day average found in the recent PDE recommendation, here are some options to consider. I'm going to start with the temporary use of face coverings. Currently, where we are is right here, it's about 1.2%. So numbers I just mentioned, 5, 6, 7, and 8 for the elementary buildings. Numbers for the board to consider would be a 1%, a 1.5%, or a 2%. So it's not about, I don't want differences in percentages between the buildings. I want the percentages to be solid wherever they are. And I also included the middle school and high school because we are having spread at those buildings. I understand all the arguments on both sides, and the numbers are up. We're 2.5 times as many cases this year. It's the spreadability of the virus. It's the lack of mitigation efforts that are not contained just to the school. There's a whole number of factors that go into this. All we can control is what we can control. So the recommendation is for the board to consider the 1, 1.5, or 2% when it comes to the numbers of cases that we would move to shifting to shifting to a face covering. For point of reference, last Friday, Leola had 4 cases, which is on there. And this is after the surge coming in from the new year. Brownstown had 5. Fritz had 14. And Smoketown had 3. So Fritz went over, and that's why they're in a mask right now. We don't have numbers for the middle school or high school. When I looked at the numbers to start the day tomorrow, because kids are gonna come back tomorrow, come off the list, off the positive cases, it's gonna be Leola having 3, Brownstown having 1, Smoketown having 0, Fritz having 5, middle school having 3, and the high school having 9. That's a point of reference for you. So when you put those numbers on this chart, what's the acceptability that the board would like to talk about?
Do you have a recommendation, or is this open are you open to all possibilities? You're your own comfort level, because you work with this daily.
I do work with this daily. I think this is a more nebulous side of the shift to masking. I think when we go to shift to online instruction, I think that number really has to have a serious discussion, because we want our kids in school. Not that this isn't serious, but I think 1% is too low, but I think anywhere either 1.5 or 2% is a number that's a real number. So I'd like to hear some.
Yeah, you realize what we're trying to do is apply this to what might happen in the future, which always difficult, but let's hash it out.
Dr. Z, you said the PDE recommends 5% threshold of cases before switching to virtual.
But it's 5% over a 14-day average.
Okay.
This is only a 5-day average.
Right.
And that's has nothing to do with wearing a mask or face shield. They do not have that. The reason we put that in is we wanted a first step to try something before we were forced to close.
Right.
The idea always is to try to keep the kids in school. I think we can be very proud of what we achieved last year along that way, and this is a way to continue that.
So do we have the numbers for the 14-day rolling period?
I can get those to you though.
Okay, I was just curious as in what percentage we're running at in a 14-day, because 14-day is a lot different than a 5-day
100%. Yes.
thing. So, like, in my personal opinion, the biggest thing is keeping the kids in school. I think that needs to be number 1. Number 2, then the masking numbers and stuff like that. I mean, for what it's worth, looking at it and like you said, all the different sides of the arguments and all of that kind of aside, my personal stance is I feel like we are at a location where we did with the middle and high school when the vaccine was available. It's up to the students and their parents to keep their kids safe, in my opinion, and do whatever they need to. So I don't know why, if we had no problem with the case counts in the middle and high school when a vaccine was available, now why all of a sudden, it almost seems like we're going backwards kind of thing. Why all of a sudden now do we have a problem with it? Now everybody can get the vaccine if they so wish, so why are we still doing a case? Okay, why aren't we still following suit like we were doing?
I mean,
that's my question, concern. We're like, I feel like we're moving on to, let's take the next step forward and let the students and parents, protect themselves and take whatever steps they need to and try and keep our kids in school and undistracted with different things, and that's just my personal take on it. Sorry, and
No, you're
I'll
fine.
interrupt you.
I know you gave me a 3-second longer pause, so I jumped right in there. Yeah, my personal opinion on this, and I have kids in Leola and also at the middle school. The way the numbers are fluctuating right now over that 5-year period, like you said, the numbers right now for the high school, which was at 20, would be 9, if I heard you correctly on that. So, and in preparation for the opinion I'm about to share, I spoke with an ER nurse that is actually related to me, and also a COVID nurse. So I have a pretty clear picture of what's happening at the hospitals and stuff like that, and where the risk is in which age group, which seems to be that 50 to 75 category. And they are getting taxed. The medical systems are definitely being taxed. But it was an interesting perspective to get those two ladies' perspectives, one of which the COVID mom, the COVID, whatever you call that, division, that mom and her perspective on it. And she tends to agree with me, which is, I'm not sure the effect. It seems like, especially since the CDC has mentioned that cloth masks seem to be relatively ineffective against Omicron, it seems to me that we're doing something that almost seems kind of pointless with our youngest kids. You have to have a tight-fitting mask for it to actually be effective, and I still hear people talking about how their kids suck on their masks all day and stuff. So that plays into the weeds, and we're trying to stay out of the weeds. So in my opinion, if we're staying out of the weeds, I would just say I don't see any reason for temporary use of face covering thresholds at all. My concern becomes, do we have enough teachers, educators, aides, bus drivers, and everything to support an effective in-day school, a successful in-day school learning experience? And if we have the numbers to support that on that, then there's no reason to close, because it's no different than children quarantining at home anyway when they've been exposed, if they're doing a virtual experience. It's really about how are we able to support in-person learning? Are we doing that successfully? Do we have enough people to do that? So for me, the shift, I don't see the difference this is going to make as far as forcing children to mask. I think it all comes down to the virtual. And even then, I'm not sure, can you do a percentage on a virtual? Because you can assume 5%, but if we still have the support staff to support in learning, then of course I would say, well, then let's stay open and support the kids that can come. And then those that have to be virtual for quarantine or whatever it might be, nothing changes. Even if it was 5% of the kids, which would be a lot. I get that's a lot of kids per building. But it seems to me that the virtual thing is almost a case-by-case basis. And I don't know if that, again, with learning what I need to know about the school board, if that is your jurisdiction specifically, Dr. Seegers, from a case-by-case basis on the school. Because there was some comment mentioned that when it comes to closing the buildings, that is Dr. Z. And I think that's where the board needs to support you and say, you have, every time I've asked you, you seem to have a finger on the pulse of how many administrators are affected. What is our bus scheduling looking like? How many substitutes are we in and out of? Aides, support, special ed, all of those things. You seem to have a really good handle on what we're missing and what's available. And I know your passion has always been to keep kids in school. So I think it's that shift to virtual learning is something we need to look at. I don't think putting thresholds in place here is doing us any good at all, frankly.
Anyone else?
I'll agree with that. My one other comment question is, as far as do you know from a teacher standpoint, being virtual, or like if we were to stay open, you know, over 5% or whatever, and doing some in school, in person, and some virtual, is that way more taxing on the teacher than you're saying, than closing the whole school in general?
Yes.
And having all the students be virtual?
And Carrie, you can nod your head when I say this. We taxed our teachers last year to do what we called real-time virtual.
Right.
And they survived real-time virtual and did the best job they could, teaching kids that were in front of them and kids that were on a monitor at the same time.
Yes, and I don't wanna, and that's what I'm saying.
That lift is too heavy right now. Because the numbers that Carrie briefly mentioned, that we're short of substitutes and how to cover the classes, and then have them, while they're covering classes, to also go virtual on those classes, it is not sustainable.
Right, and it's way more difficult, way more taxing on them than to close the school for 14 days and do it all virtual, is what you're saying.
Correct. I mean,
Okay,
if there was
I'm just making sure I'm correct on
Yes,
that.
if there was, if they could teach just virtual or just in person, would be better than going and trying to do both at the same time.
Right.
We had multiple presentations last year, and the teachers were really going above and beyond, but all of them said, this is working for now, but it is not sustainable.
Correct. And that's what I assumed. I wanted to make sure that, because it's trying to a balance between keeping kids in school and also not.
Yeah,
So that our
that is not a
teachers.
viable option. That is not a viable option.
Just so I understand, you both are recommending we go to 0, not the 1.5 or 2.
That's my.
Yeah, that would be
And
my
when I've
personal
looked at
feeling.
what some of the other school districts in the area are doing too, they're focused simply on virtual closing, some of them. Some of them still have some of this stuff in place, or
There's some
maybe it's
districts
not.
that are mandatory masking right now,
Yeah.
Right.
but
And
we're CV though.
Yeah, no,
So
agreed.
keep the focus here.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm just trying to get a feel for what the county in general is doing, taking into consideration all the demographics.
I also have the numbers as of today from LGH.
Okay.
And it also tells the spike in the young ages that are positive with COVID. And I can show you the numbers as well.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's definitely contagious. We went through it and 3 out of my 4 got it, and 2 of them coughed twice and they were done and the other one didn't. And I'm not saying that's the same experience everybody's gonna have. But again, if the concern is to keep kids in school, I don't see the need to put the mask on them, especially on our youngest kids who don't do it appropriately anyway. The shift needs to be, in my opinion, just how do we
Get more people vaccinated?
No, again, that's all personal choice. CDC recommendations are for everybody. It's not just for school board. Every parent should have the opportunity to see and decide, do I want my child to be vaccinated? Do I want them to wear a mask? Because obviously we don't tell them not to do that. Any child that comes to school masked should be treated just as fairly as any child that isn't masked.
And they still have to wear a mask on the buses though.
Yeah,
That's
that's fine.
mandatory.
And that's a public transport thing, which needs to be in place. That's fine. Just like if parents are going into a store and they decide they want their children to wear the mask in the store, that's fine. They can do whatever they want. Not even a lot of the stores are requiring anything anymore anyway. It's hard for me to justify doing mask thresholds for children when the community in general is not doing anything different, despite how contagious everything is. So when you've got one whole side that isn't doing anything, and then a school district that's saying, no, it's up to our kids to save our county numbers, that doesn't make any sense to me. We're putting the battlefield in the wrong place. And for every story of kids that comply and it's not a big deal to them, there are still those kids that have anxiety attacks because they have to mask up every day again. We know friends that have had that happen to their child.
No,
It's
when we
not
do
an
this,
easy
though,
choice
the
anyway.
mandatory masking would still include the exemptions
Yeah.
that were in place before that.
Yeah, and I get that. I just think at this point, this to me seems a moot point. It's just, what do we need to do to keep everybody in school?
This is to slow it down. That's what this.
I'm just not
does.
convinced that it does
In
anything.
theory.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that it does anything. I mean, we're off school now, I know since Friday. We've had Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and all the numbers have dropped by half, more than half on a couple of the buildings incoming. So the question would be too, is if we do go to virtual, if we had to, this was actually what would have been one of my more serious questions. If we have to go to virtual, what is the recommended what is the recommended virtual time? Because we can't say 14 days, that's kind of based on the old number. And if the numbers have fluctuated that much with cases that are affecting kids in our school district just in 4 days, then would it just be a 5-day mandatory virtual, just 1 week? What do we need to do? Because the bounce back, particularly for the kids, seems to be pretty quick. And I know I'm generalizing, obviously, immunocompromised kids and stuff, certain members of the community have a tougher time, and I understand that. But I'm saying in general, if we have to go virtual, 5-day close, numbers should bounce right back, because that's already happened in just 4 days.
So let's focus on one thing at a time.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is this off the table. Take it and move it away from two individuals. I haven't heard from everybody else.
I do not like the thought of virtual as a parent of young ones, running from iPad to iPad to iPad all day long.
Mhm.
It's insane. So virtual to me is not an option. If I wanted to do that as a parent, I would have made that decision in August when we opened the schools with everybody with an option whether you want a mask or not, virtual. They had all these options. They all made the decision. Everybody started school. And then the government got involved. So everyone's going to get sick. It's just, some are going to get tested, some are not. What we need to be teaching is wash your hands before you eat, wash your hands after you eat. Just common sense hygiene that they're going to need for the rest of their lives versus a kindergartner who sucks on their mask all day. If we do a face covering, the percentage to switch to face coverings to keep the kids in schools, it needs to be a higher percentage so we're not constantly sending out notices. The school has to mask. The school can stop wearing masks. So the school now has to go. It's going to be a nightmare. So if we pick a percentage so that it wiggles down here, we don't have to do anything because of what we put into place. It can do all its movement underneath that threshold. And we're not constantly sending out emails, notices, messages, all that stuff to the parents, having to, okay, you gotta get masks, you gotta wear masks, don't take it off when you get off the bus, you gotta wear it during school, but masks don't work. There's tons of studies how it's not stopping the spread of this, because it's not the correct mask, and N95s, for kids, they have to be fitted right, there's no way a 5-year-old's gonna wear it. So I think if we use a percentage, it needs to be high enough so that if we ever do go face coverings, which hopefully we never do, it's at a point where COVID's just, in the background running and we can focus on getting these kids back up to where they need to academically for the 2 years that they've lost and are behind. And mental and emotional.
Do you have any suggestion as to where you think that is, that we can stay below? Because again, we're talking about coming up with something to apply in the future, next week and the week after and the week after that. And I don't know that any of us have any confidence that we really know where that's going. That's what's difficult for me.
Yeah, I don't know that we do, and I kind of feel like if you're picking a number to be high enough, then what's the point of picking a number? Like, if you're picking a number to stay under it, then why are we bothering
The number we have right now, we've been staying under, right?
picking a number?
Well, no, because Fritz is masks.
Right. I think there's a huge difference between an adult wearing a mask correctly and efficiently than a kindergartner, a first grade, a second grade. And that's why I feel that's why I'm saying about it, as far as in always, picking it, moving it, dirty, never washing it, just stuff like that, where leaning, not that the mask itself is necessarily ineffective or anything like that, just the wearing it correctly and everything. I think it goes down drastically as the age of the child goes down, the effectiveness of it. That's why my personal opinion, so I was saying, it's just.
Have you gotten feedback from teachers about that?
I can give you anecdotal records where students are wearing, for the most part, and you're right, it goes down. This is back when we had masks being mandatory.
Right.
And I want to see your counterpoint though, that means that if the kids are older, they wear the mask more correctly. so that, yeah, be careful what you say, because that means the high school kids should be wearing a mask correctly, and it will be more effective against the spread, so just make sure I understand where you're coming from.
Right, I'm just saying, I don't think it's necessarily effective because of one, like younger kids not knowing, older kids not caring. Like knowing how to wear it and
Yeah.
not caring, therefore eliminating the
So if we can go back
effectiveness of
and
it.
help Dr. Z out, so this either stays or goes,
Right,
just from a simplicity perspective.
yeah, I mean, you heard my
This
opinion,
is his
but,
first line of defense. If you take that away, he's only got two options. You're either open or you're virtual. That's what he has
correct.
without this. So if we take this away, he's got A and B. He doesn't have A, B, and C. And are we okay with that?
Right, I mean, my personal feeling is, I don't know how effective A is. So that's my opinion on it. I also don't know as,
Well, I mean,
like
you
you said,
think about it. We had mandatory masks and we had lower numbers. Now we have optional
right,
masks.
and I mean, things are, and I'm not saying that they're not
So-
effective, but I'm saying everything changes every day with different
Sure it does.
variants, different, all that kind of stuff. So, like you said about the 5% for closing and for a 14-day period, I think that's where our biggest thing is. Like Mark was saying, after, like, if it's a 5-day, hey, we hit at this percentage, whatever, we'll close for that week or whatever, and see what our numbers are again. If the next week they're still over that, then maybe we extend it another week, instead of an automatically 14-day period, and then 5 days into it, okay, the case numbers are way down to 1 or 2%, but we're still gonna stay closed for 2 more weeks because kind of thing, that's.
Can I ask, the decision that we make tonight, how long will that last? Like, will we be revisiting this again? Is this until the end of June?
It goes back to, you don't wanna have a moving target. So the decision you make tonight is a decision I'm gonna stick with until there's another 6-month review of this plan.
6-month review.
That would be my recommendation,
That's okay.
because
That's what I
you
wanted
can't
to
say,
know.
you can't say I wanna pick 1.5, and then you hit the number and you're like, I didn't like 1.5 because I didn't want the mask, so
Correct.
next month we're gonna
Sure.
change it to 2 or 3 or 4. The reason that we've been successful in staying open for the last 22 months is we had a plan and we followed the plan. We did not deviate from the plan. We stayed open last year when it was 80% in person, 20% virtual. And thank you to the teachers, and Carrie, please thank them again for the work they did to keep our schools open and our kids in the classroom. We started this year with a plan. And even when the Secretary of Health came through with the masking, we still had a plan. We still kept school open. And because of that, we have not seen the drop in academics that we have compared to other schools who were virtual the whole time. So kudos to the teachers and the administrators because we followed the plan. So I don't want to keep changing a plan. So I have to fall back on something. And this is what I'm falling back on. So that's why I'm asking for your recommendation and direction.
So our original plan was mask optional. That was our original plan. Then the governor stepped in and did his thing, and
Right,
that got
right.
threw a whole wrench in the
Then it
piece.
ended up being mask optional.
Then
But what was consistent so far was this.
was this, yeah. Well, we had masks mandatory, so this is almost irrelevant.
Well, even when
When we
it
get it.
wasn't, right.
Yeah.
But it was in place to start the year.
Yes, it was.
I
So-
think, for me, I'm gonna weigh in a little bit here. What Mike said about having 3 levels of choices is really relevant. We don't know what it's gonna look like 3 weeks from now or whatever. And whether or not 100% of the kids wear them properly, we can only do so much. And I think we should do whatever we can do. And it seems to me that this higher percentage that Dr. Z has presented, there's 2 higher ones, is a good compromise. Any child who has an issue with wearing them, all his parents have to do is ask for the exemption. The minute they ask for it, this mask is off. And I think that's something some people don't realize. You don't have to jump through a whole bunch of hoops to have your child exempt. You only have to come to the principal, who do you take that to?
Well, it goes to the principal and it's a 504 plan, so there's
Okay.
there's some paperwork afterwards.
You know, you just go to the principal and as of that time, your child is exempt. I'm not going to get into discussion of how effective they are or aren't, because no matter which side of that argument you're on, you can prove it. You can find someone to say they're useless, you can find someone to say they're great. But I just feel as if we have to do as much as we can, being as unintrusive as possible. And I think this is an excellent middle road. Keep that number where, at least up until now, it's allowed us to keep the schools open. And that, to me, is what's more important than anything. And I know there are parents on both sides, we're all getting the same emails. My sense is that there's a small, I shouldn't say small, but there are groups on both sides that are adamant about one side or the other. But I do have the feeling both of those groups are the same size. There's as many who want it as don't, and I just think this is our middle road, and this gives the superintendent as many tools as possible to keep the school open. And that's where I stand. Is there any board member who has not weighed in that would like to make a comment?
I guess, Dr. Z, I'd like to understand if what we've been doing has been working. What would be the compelling reason to make a change in either direction?
I don't think you can answer that, can you?
I think,
Well,
I
we
think,
just have a,
I think by defining the word working is a relative term. In that we had lower numbers last year for a number of outside reasons because of the stricter mitigation that had other consequences in the community. Places closing down, things like that. But for the schools, we had lower numbers. But then the variant wasn't as transmissible as the Omicron is. So there's a lot of things that I can't say, giving this compared to that, there's too many variables. So what I would look at is saying that doing something is better than doing nothing. That this may not stop all of the Omicron going out. But I also know it stops something. So I'm not an epidemiologist, immunologist, I don't know. I know that the numbers that I look at from LGH, 75% of the people who are in the hospital are unvaccinated. The number of students that are being sick is rising. Is this stopping it? I don't know. But the only way to prove the negative, and am I willing to say more kids could get sick? If we're already getting sicker, and I'm not doing anything, they're gonna keep getting sicker. So I've gotta try something in my purview that I can. I can't make masks mandatory, I can't make vaccines mandatory. I guess I could quarantine, because I have it in my power to say DOH quarantines, but I can exclude. So I can say, if you're a close contact, Mike's positive, the 4 of you are now close contacts, now you're out of school for 10 days. And then the teachers are gonna be quarantined, and then we're gonna shut down. We will shut down if we have the quarantine. So right now, we make the recommendation per Department of Health, they recommend that you quarantine, and you count on the parents to say, yep, I'm gonna keep my child home for 5 days because he was a close contact. So what we can do is limited. I think this is something that we can do. So when you say that the higher number, you're right. It's just like going to zero. Because you're making an arbitrary number that doesn't, why have the number? So I think right now, we had a huge rush after the New Year's. Everybody was at home, everybody was with family, they were out of state, they came back and we got crushed. Fritz got crushed more than anybody. Do I ever think Fritz is gonna hit 14 again? Not with the numbers that I'm looking at for tomorrow, to start the day, but the numbers are up. Make no mistake, we're 2.5 times as many cases this year than last year. So that's why I look at 1.5% and 2%. I think the reasonable numbers were a majority of the time, we may not hit it. And we've only made one call to shift the mask, and that was with Fritz. So it's not like it's happening all the time. So I just think that it's a reasonable answer.
I tend to agree that if we take the highest recommendation, we're sort of the closest to what everyone wants. But one thing I would like to add, and that's something Mrs. Kapka said, and I completely support this, a reaffirmation of the hygiene. The distancing when possible, the hygiene. We don't talk about it, excuse me, as much as we did when we first started, but I think we need to make sure everybody knows that is every bit as important today, no matter what we decide here this evening, as it was the first day we heard about COVID. I think she makes an excellent point with that. And sometimes that doesn't get mentioned often enough. But we are still providing the sanitation and the cleaning along with it. Well, we have any other
These
perspectives?
numbers are just students, it doesn't include the teachers.
It does include staff.
It does include staff.
In fact, of the 23 cases that I'm looking at for tomorrow, 6 of them are adults. We have been averaging about 10% of our cases being the adults, which makes sense because it's about 10% of our population. But that's a higher number of adults right now.
What I'm seeing might be an issue is you have siblings in the same household, one's in elementary, one's in middle or high school. So the high school doesn't have this threshold to ever go to mass. They come and infect their sibling who passes it around school because they don't wash their hands. They, pull down the mask to sneeze. So I think we need to have either a threshold of all of the schools because of siblings in the same household at different schools. Like, just because the high school has a vaccination, if they get sick, they're gonna pass it on to a sibling. It's gonna go through that household. So you only have thresholds for elementary schools.
No, I have thresholds for all of them. Currently, we only have elementary because back in July, the vaccines weren't available. Now I'm saying, my proposal is that
you do for
all of them have 1% is for everybody.
I think we should go with the PDE's recommendation of 5% for a 14-day rolling.
That's for closing a school.
Well, can we do that for shifting to mass? Whether we want to do a rolling 10-day at 5% versus a 14-day and then.
You're just putting it way up here, we're never gonna meet it, so we'll have it.
Right now, middle and high school, they can all be coming home and infecting their siblings.
That's why we're trying to do something about it.
At the sibling level, the younger kids. Why not mask the high school and middle school and leave the elementary schools alone? So it's you're not looking at the whole group. These kids are older, and it doesn't talk to each other.
No, that's when you get into paralysis by analysis. Is what we call it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where you can come up with all kinds of
Scenarios.
Right.
I think the last thing I want to say, just to refine my point and keep it as simple as possible, because I do think there's a lot to say when we start getting into stuff about if I'm going to stay out of the weeds, then my personal feeling is the numbers that you mentioned, Dr. Z, are showing this bounce back, this fluctuation. We would not need to mask for everybody except Fritz. So if there's going to be that natural fluctuation anyway, then I definitely don't agree with setting the number high. I just say move the mask threshold, because again, what we're saying by saying a mask threshold is that it's our responsibility to somehow protect a community when the CDC guidelines are for everybody. And I understand we can't determine what's coming down the lane, but the CDC is going to change guidelines all the time. They already have, and they're our floor, correct? If the CDC guidelines and PDE are our floor, they can change stuff whenever they want to, and we have to adjust or respond appropriately, like we did with the 5-day quarantine versus the 10.
Sure.
So they're already establishing a floor for us, so to speak. So then the question is, I personally don't really connect with the idea of we're not doing enough, at least we're doing something. My job as a parent is to make the best education make the best decision for my children as I can. I look at these numbers every day and I decide if it got to a point, but again, now I'm looking at it from a COVID parent and saying, well, 3 of my 4 already had COVID. So I don't really see any reason for them to mask because now they're immune. They have antibodies. Regardless of how anybody feels about any of that stuff, again, they're my children. And as a parent, I'm making the choice for my children's health. Because if that wasn't there, then we would have community standards now passed
Yes
on
and no.
saying Omicron's
Because now
out
you're making
there,
a decision
everybody's
for
getting
4,000
masks.
kids.
No, I'm not. They can choose to be
They can
vaccinated.
mask.
They
No,
can
this
choose
is-
to wear
this
masks.
is-
They can choose to wear masks.
No.
This is how I feel my role as a school board, and I know I'm new. I'm the new guy, so that's okay. Everybody can point fingers at me. I
I'm
don't
not pointing
mind.
fingers at you, I'm just saying that as a
But
school
what I'm
board
saying
member,
is, no, I
you're
understand.
making the decision for everybody.
Let me finish my
And
point.
not just your kids.
Let me finish my point. Let me just say what I'm gonna say. It's simply this. As a parent, I'm responsible for my children, and I need to look at all the data and decide, what do I wanna do? That's why mask optional works, is because I can say, yeah, I see the numbers are going up. So regardless of what the school does, I'm gonna throw a mask on my child. I'm gonna say, hey, do your best to try to keep that thing on your face because it's going up. So why should the school have to mandate anything in terms of masking, especially when the numbers are already bouncing back from high school and middle school? I just don't see the point. The numbers that you just mentioned, they're half or right around there, and we're getting this kind of a bounce on 5 days. So if we make it a 5% number we're never gonna reach, what's the point? Let's just get rid of them and let's talk about where the threshold needs to be for virtual and try to avoid that as much as we can. But we have to trust parents. If we're talking about personal hygiene, we're trusting parents to teach their children to do that. We can talk about it all day long in school, but if parents aren't enforcing it at home because the kids are like we made the point last meeting, they're out in the community anyway. The community's not doing anything different. So why is the school district responsible to somehow magically bring all these numbers down? We're one school district of many in Lancaster County. And each school is doing something different that they feel they need to do for our community. And that's fine. I think that's the way it's supposed to be. But we have to take into consideration the fact that all of this stuff, all the mitigation efforts are already out there. You can be vaccinated, you can mask anywhere you want to go. You can look at the numbers and say, you know what, Dr. Z, I'm not sending my kid to school for 2 days because the numbers are too high. We're just gonna stay home and figure it out. Okay, we'll send your work home, whatever it is. Our job is to support parents' decision on how they need to protect their children because they overwrite anything that we try to do anyway. So that's the way I'm looking at that, just from my own parent perspective, is I don't see the point in this. You can choose to mask up now, why wouldn't you? We're all concerned adults, we're all paying attention to it. We can make our own decision. I think the focus is on virtual. So this to me is weeds now. These mask thresholds, and like you said, we've had one school close and it was Fritz because their numbers went up, but we didn't have to do any mandatory masking for middle and high school yet, and the numbers are already dropping. So why are we even talking about this? That's just how I feel about it. It's up to the adults, the parents to make the decisions for the children. How do we avoid going virtual
The one,
with a percentage?
if I could just comment on one statement that
Sure,
I'm gonna have to disagree with
that's fine.
100%.
Yeah.
In that it is my job to look out for the health and safety of each one of those 4,000 kids. It's my job.
Sure.
In fact, we have health standards that are in place where we teach kids how to wash their hands, how to do this stuff, because they may or may not be in a household where their parents show them how to do that.
Sure.
So my responsibility is to make sure that every child is engaged in a positive learning environment in as safe a manner as possible. So it is my job to make sure that they're safe.
Sure.
When you said that the middle school and high school, they would have been over on a couple of occasions. Because the high school, they got hit hard. So they would have went over that 14 number.
But what if it caused the school to need to close? Because the numbers bounce back, especially when we're talking about a 5-day quarantine. That's the piece the CD recommends 5 days.
Right, and that's the bottom line when I said that the district has the ability to adjust and make what works for them. My concern is that I can't just focus on my daughter, but I have to focus on everybody's daughter and everybody's son.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think I was the one that sort of like threw this out in like September, August. So I'll take the heat on that. But again, I'm gonna go back to, I have my own personal opinions and views on masks. And I make my own choices, and I make my choices for my family, and my husband participates in that too. Again, they're my personal. That's right. Those are my personal views. When I sit at this table, I am making decisions or thinking about 4,000 other people. And most of which who do not have the resources that I happen to have. There are, I keep going back to the equitability piece of this that is most important for me. And again, while, again, I have my own views on masks and when my kid will or will not wear one, but that's me. And that's my family's choice. So to do something instead of absolutely nothing, at least to have a buffer, because I'm gonna go back to the virtual thing and I'm gonna hit that, like that is way more important to me. So if there's something that we can do, and you can argue till you're blue in the face whether a mask works or not for a kindergartner, at least it's something rather than nothing, and you're keeping it equitable, access to education for everyone at that point.
Okay, I think there's no doubt that whatever we do, we're going to have, the people that you're trying to vote in behalf of, whatever we do, there are gonna be people that will be unhappy. So, to try to please everyone is difficult. You have to say
First of all, I'm getting tired of talking about COVID.
Well, we all are.
I'm just to the point where, I understand, no, I know. My thing is that, so I'm just gonna use what happened as an example with Fritz. So you had students at Fritz that were masking because they had the case count, which the past board approved, which I was fine with. Then you had kids going to Smoketown, for example, that could have been positive but didn't have the mask. And then you had kids at Fritz that were negative that had the mask. So I understand the premise of this is if we do this, we're doing it for everybody. It's not gonna be exclusive just to elementary school levels anymore. My thing, and has always been, is that there are now vaccines available for everybody. If you want the vaccine, you can get it. If you don't. And that was the initial premise that we followed back when we did this. So, just from a standpoint on how we did it before, why would we change that now? If that is how we did it before. That's just where I am, and those are the facts. That's how we did it before. That's how we should be doing it now, regardless of where I stand and how I personally feel. Because you're right, it's not just about my kids, because my kids have it too. It's about everybody's kids. And that's just where I'm at with it.
Well, I think when you say you're sick of talking about COVID, you're not alone. I understand.
And my other premise is to go back to what you said and what Mark reiterated, and this is not to keep going on what you said, but it's the weeds thing. This is going to more than likely be the last weed, hypothetically speaking, that for us. We just got to get rid of the weed. That's my opinion.
Well, look, we could bounce this around, all night, but it's a point where at some point I need to have a motion, and if it passes, it does. If it doesn't, then we look for a second motion. Is anyone willing to start this process for us?
I would motion to remove the thresholds.
I'm sorry.
I motion to remove the masking thresholds.
I have a motion to remove the thresholds. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Have a second. We will have a
Roll call.
roll call. Oh, no. Stop for a second. I promised that I would stop. It is in my prerogative to allow public input immediately before a vote on important issues. So if there's anyone from the public who has a comment, now's the time to stand up and identify yourself.
Okay, my name is Karen Nguyen, and I'm a resident at 316 Sun Valley Drive, Leola. And after hearing everybody's opinions and explanation, discussion about this, I tend to agree with Mr. Gensel, because what he says makes a lot of sense. For the people who's fearful of COVID, they have 2 layers of protection. 3 layers of protection. They want to. They have mask, they have vaccination, and they can have triple mask if they want to prevent them from getting the transmission. But the parents who, they're not fearful of that. They want their children to get it, have immunity with it. Let them do that. Give them that option. Why are we being so fearful and hysterical about this virus when when children are being exposed to germs every day? That's the whole point, is to build their immunity, right? I mean, as babies grow up to adulthood, they have to build up their own immunity protection. And the only way to get that natural immunity is for them to be exposed to the germs. So why are we protecting, these kids from these germs when the right thing to do, those thousands of years of science have told us that the way to get the natural immunity is to be exposed to this illness and get it over with and be done with it. And that's what I think that's most important. And I support Mr. Gansel and, and Mr. I'm sorry, Philip and, positions on this. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else before we vote? Yes.
My name's Scott Hershey. We have, we're from 152 Southeast Lynn Drive. We have two kids, one in Spunktown in middle school. Two things I'd like to touch on here real quick. The first is the discussion that was occurring here as far as thresholds and whatnot. I was in this school district when I was a child, and we went through the old chicken pox, call it a pandemic or whatever it was. The school didn't really step in. Hey, if your kid has chicken pox, don't send him to school. When my oldest son, who's now 22, was in the school, we had swine flu. That was the big thing, swine flu. If you think your kid has swine flu, don't send him to school. I guess I question why this is different. We've dealt with these things. If your kid's sick, don't send him to school. I'm one of those that's not convinced that these masks are effective, but that's neither here nor there. The second thing I'd like to say, and I don't know if it was mentioned, I had to step out for a second. If it was, I apologize. The threshold or the determination to go to virtual, I think there needs to be a lot of thought and a lot of input into that. Aside from the children, I know in our home, my wife and I both work.
Mm-hmm.
So a transition to virtual means one of us misses a week of work. If our kids aren't sick, I don't see where that's fair, to be honest. Now we're losing half of our income. Perhaps it's the incentive that if we reach this point, we're gonna shut the schools down. That's the incentive for parents and students. We don't wanna get to that. So if our kids seem like they're getting sick, we're gonna keep them home. We're gonna take them to the doctor. I know we've had these discussions, we've been in the meetings where everybody gets all fired up. I don't think any parent, I hope no parent, wants their kids to get sick. I think we're gonna do everything in our power to keep our kids from getting sick. But I think we're gonna handle that. I don't think the masking, I don't think that needs to come from anywhere else. If your kid's sick, keep them home. Yeah, I can
So
justify
your time
missing a
is
week
about
of work if
expired.
your
Will you
child's sick.
please wrap this up for us?
I'm sorry?
Your time is about expired. Will you please
That's all I
wrap
have.
it up for us?
You did great, though.
Thank you. Is there
May I speak,
anyone
Mr.
else?
President?
Sure.
Dina
Juan,
Henry,
wait a second. Are
230
you a parent?
I am a parent
Okay.
and a resident. And a resident, yep. Dina Henry, 237.
You're a voter, you're clean.
And a voter, that's
All right.
absolutely right. Date Drive. One of the reasons that people are so fearful is because of the millions of people who have died. And masking, yes, that is one form of defense, but the masking protects you. So if I have COVID or I have whatever, I put on a mask so I don't spread it to you, and I would appreciate it if somebody else wore a mask so they don't spread it to me. So I think this is fantastic because people should be wearing masks more than they are, in my opinion. And then the other thing is yes, obviously, we think of the students first, but we have to also protect the adults that are in the schools. And if it is the adults who are getting sicker and dying more, then we have to think about those people too. So, I think that yes, obviously, we are taking care of our students and we want to do that all the time. But we have to take care of our teachers and our administrators or else we have no school.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes.
Samantha Hershey, 152 Southeastern Drive.
I just wanted to say, I totally agree that the illness is very, very serious. And I get the fact that it is affecting our elderly and we have to, make sure that everybody stays healthy. But on the other end of it, my son just came home from school last week and said that one of his friends was picking her nose and wiped it on the desk. I mean, we can't control everything. That's germs are germs. I don't think that making every kid wear a mask is going to do anything when they're up here or down here or, my kids bring home masks and they're filled with snot. And I just don't find it's not helpful. I mean, they're going to spread it. I don't see the difference in if they're wearing it to walk through the hall and then they take it off at the table and they're all sitting there laughing and coughing on each other. I mean, either way, they're gonna get sick, mask or no mask. So that's my opinion.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes.
My name is Wayne Penniger. I live at 8 Bradford Drive, Leola. I have 3 children, one who has graduated from high school, one who is in the high school currently, and one who is in Leola Elementary. Maybe I'm overthinking this whole thing, but we're talking about percentages. And I haven't heard anybody talk about the fact that Delta reproduces at a rate of like 2 people for every 1 person who gets it, and that the illness from Delta was apparently much more severe, much more serious than the illness from Omicron, which reproduces at a rate closer to 6, I think. So we're talking about low percentages of children who are going to get Omicron, which isn't going to kill as many people, which isn't going to make people, I mean, it's basically a cold from what I understand most of the time. But if they all have Omicron and it's going to reproduce at this high rate, it's going to be very quickly the whole school's going to have it and everybody's going to get it, and then we're going to close down for a cold.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes.
Hi, I'm Joel Wack. I live at 1545 Robert Road. I have a daughter in middle school and 2 at the elementary school. I think one important part with the masking or the temporary use is the goal of school should be consistency, or one of the goals in school should be consistency. And by the kids not knowing and looking at a dashboard on a daily basis and going, oh my goodness, am I gonna have to go on a mask tomorrow? Am I gonna get an email tonight? We have to think of the potential emotional and mental stress that causes the kids. And I think we just have to ask the question, does that outweigh the potential of getting the Omicron? My goal is to be as respectful as possible to all views, your choices, whatever. But I said it at a board meeting back in the fall, and it just goes back to that mental stress of, am I gonna have to mask or not, and just that potential of flip-flopping. Currently, Fritz is the only one. And luckily, my voice, we've been able to take, I don't wanna say take advantage of, but we've been able to use that exemption. I know from me, my voice has said, Dad, if we had to wear masks to school, like, we're not going. And if that's in out for every single student, what does the school do? If all of a sudden 95% of the students say, I want the exemption, all this work is for nothing. So if there's that option for that, why go through all of this and just say, hey, fill out this exemption form and you're good to go. If you are gonna be standing behind that as a school board, I think there needs to be a much better job of that being communicated from the school board as an option for the students if you guys walk towards this temporary, or keeping the temporary use of face masks. So, thanks.
I would just note that we explained that last year, that anyone could ask for an exemption, and we did not have 95% do it, but that's always been in place.
I agree. I think there could be a better job of communicating that to the community.
Okay.
So just an exhortation. If we
No,
keep
I will accept that. Anyone else? Okay, then we are at the point where I would like, we have a motion and a second. We're going to have a roll call vote on the motion to remove all thresholds.
Can I ask one quick question?
Yes.
As far as in for that 5% for the 14-day for going virtual. is
That's a
that
separate
That's a separate issue.
Okay,
That's
just wanted to make sure
separate issue.
that was going to be separate.
This either
Yeah.
stays or goes.
Just wanted to clarify
Well,
that that was
th-
separate.
This is a one solution motion.
For the,
That we
okay.
get rid of the whole thing. If
wanna
you
make sure we're
think
on
we
the same
have to
page.
have it on any level, then you would vote no. If you think we don't need it in any circumstance, you vote yes.
No, wait a minute, that's inverse, because they voted for it to go away.
Yes,
So
if
you vote yes
if we
for that.
don't need it at all,
Yep.
you vote yes.
And then if you do need it.
That doesn't obligate you to any other solution. It just on this
Mm-hmm.
solution. Okay, do we all understand what your vote means?
Yes, ma'am.
Got that?
Mrs. Martin, will you
We're
call
good?
the roll, please?
Mr. Talley.
No.
Mrs. Kapka.
Aye.
Mr. Dillman.
No.
Mr. Gensel.
Aye.
Mr. Hurst.
Aye.
Dr. Martin.
No.
Ms. Trowbridge.
No.
Mr. Benigno.
Aye.
Mrs. Groff.
No.
I'm sorry, what was your
What
vote?
was the vote?
5-4.
yes?
No.
Was it no?
1, 2, 3.
Is it 5-4 in favor of the motion?
No.
5-4,
No,
no.
failed.
Motion
Fine.
rejected.
So now we
The
need
mo- the
to,
motion has not
now we need a
passed.
number.
So, we have decided we're not going to remove the thresholds altogether. Where are we going to put them?
I make a motion to put it at 2%, if I can.
Is that a motion? I have a
I
motion to
second
put the threshold at 2% as reflected in one of the recommendations. Do I have a second?
Yes, I second it.
Roll call vote. Mrs. Martin?
Mr. Talley.
Yes.
Mrs. Kapka.
Aye.
Mr. Dillman.
Aye.
Mr. Gensel.
No.
Mr. Hurst.
No.
Dr. Martin.
Aye.
Ms. Trowbridge.
Aye.
Mr. Benigno.
Aye.
Mrs. Groff.
Aye. Vote count, please.
7 in favor,
Of the
2
motion.
opposed.
Are we ready to move on, folks?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Hopefully for good.
We're not moving too far though.
I really appreciate the sincerity and the depth of the conversation. I think it's something we owe the public to make sure they know that a lot of thought went into this.
Quick question,
Yes.
what does that mean for Fritz?
Fritz is coming out of their masking. I guess it's going into place right now, but they're at 14, so we continue the days. It's not once you drop off, you drop the mask. It was a 14-day.
Okay,
So Frisk is still masking.
Yes.
That includes non-school days, right? That's
Yes.
a consistent
Yes.
thing,
Yeah.
okay. And someone mentioned about, the reaffirmation of this. We've only got, 4.5 months of school left. So school will close before we have to address the original plan again anyhow.
Is it 14 school days or 14 days?
14 days.
14 days.
It's just
Calendar days.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Information agenda.
Nope,
No, we gotta do the
No.
online,
we've got to do the
What
online
did I miss?
instruction. That's
the
shift.
online, instruction.
Oh,
When do we
yeah.
go to online? Or not?
I'm sorry?
I said, when do we go, so we need to approve this, correct, or discuss this?
No, yeah, the
We're
other half of
discussing
this,
this.
no, he's right, the virtual half of
Yep.
it. Is there a discussion to be had on that? What's your recommendation of administration?
Doesn't Dave determine that on his own accord? Right, Dave? Or am I wrong?
Yeah, no, Dr. Mr. Brigham, no, you're right on that one.
But if we did the,
Because here's where the weeds, where I'm the weed whacker, okay? This one here, you can put a number there, but there's a star there, an asterisk. The main number is, do I have enough teachers? Do I have enough bus drivers? Do I have enough cafeteria staff? How can I manage this? But in staying true to the consistency of saying we want to put a temporary 2% number, I think at least that 4% or that 3% or 3.5% is something that says I have to look at this. So this, I mean, I wanna keep school open because our kids should be in school,
Well,
but they should be in school safely.
we have the choice as a board to give a directive to the superintendent. And we also have the choice to give him the prerogative and the confidence to make the correct decision if the schools can stay open.
Dr. Z, what is the protocol right now?
The protocol right now is I basically talk with the building principals who are affected directly, and can we get coverage for teachers? And can I shift teachers or move administrators into teaching positions temporarily while adults are out? We do the same thing with our food services. We shift from different buildings to make sure that our kids are being fed. Bus drivers, we may have to go to a double run. So there may be a chance that I don't have enough bus drivers, so your child will be coming home a half hour later than normal because they gotta do one run and go back out and do another run, just because I don't have them. So there is no set number. It's based on the situation at each of the individual buildings.
So right now, there is no case count parameter.
No, the only thing that
for
came
moving
down
to
was
online.
from PDE, and that was last week at 5% for 14-day rolling average. And it's a recommendation only.
Yeah, from the PDE.
I will
So
explain
then-
this, we are not allowed to have a negative vote. We cannot vote not to do something. So if I get no motion, then basically what we're saying is, we're allowing this to stay at the discretion of the superintendent and his best judgment.
Does having this threshold help you? Because like you said, if it's the whole, like, do you already have something in your head that tells you, like I
I don't have
have?
a number because the numbers are, I could have Leola at 16.
Right.
That could be 16 kids and no staff.
Right, because you're still looking at it based on the
And
asterisk.
can I provide an instructional
Right.
environment to our kids?
So if everything's based on the asterisk, my only question would be, does voting on voting on a percentage and a number actually help him do this job better? Because if it doesn't, then I'm trying to understand.
Whether you vote on this or not, I'm gonna have this in my back pocket.
Right, because you have to look at it anyway, and you should be. So, yeah, I'm just trying to understand why we
And
need
to
to
that
vote
point,
on
if,
4%.
what's the point of having a superintendent if we don't trust him when it comes to whether we get it virtual?
Thank you.
Right.
Right, agreed.
Yeah, I think he
So I
has the
think- I think we
ability
need
to discern and
So
what's best and
I'm
use
safe
different
I'm
things
safe to
accordingly.
assume there is no motion to give the superintendent a directive.
No.
Thank you.
If I have a problem with, I'll walk down the street, knock on his door.
And I appreciate that. And I also appreciate,
Okay. Well, I think it was good to stop for a moment and recognize the fact that this is his job, and he's the one that can best decide it, and at some point, we have to separate the governance from the management. And I'm always hesitant to step over that line. If we don't trust him, we've got a bigger problem than COVID.
Agreed.
Okay, all right. So as I said, I was ready to move on. Finance and operations report on the information agenda, or the curriculum and instruction report. Any comments, any questions? Federal funds, Dr.
I do have one comment for curriculum instruction. Beginning in February, I will be putting out invitations to each of the board members when I'll be going out to different buildings. If it fits your schedule, let me know. We'll hit the different buildings. The same will be in effect for both Dr. Mann and Dr. Kozer at the secondary and elementary levels. If those times don't work or that building isn't the one you want to go to, just let me know. It's very flexible when we walk around the buildings.
That just a light bulb, it doesn't have anything to do with what you just said, but we had that, and I don't mean to segue off, but we have that training on the 31st, right? for
At the
new-
IU.
Can we just reiterate what those times were, where that exactly is? Because I know we filled out the form, and I didn't mean to segue off, but he said schedule. Just
5:15 is
clicked my brain.
registration,
That's under
5:30
board
is dinner.
comments.
5:15 is registration, 5:30 is dinner. I believe 6 o'clock is when the training begins.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to veer off, it just popped in my brain, I apologize.
Well, we have a place in the agenda for board
I got nervous.
concerns. But we got it.
Got it.
Thank you, Denise.
No federal funds today.
No federal funds. As far as the other reports, I have a couple of things to add to mine. The IU, I guess you all know by now that we've hired a new executive director in Matt Stem. We have a new board president in Dr. Joe Fullerton. We're looking for an auditor. We've distributed from Penn Med the self-testing kits to around what districts from what we got from them. And they are looking at another promotion of public schools, much like the billboards that were out last spring. To the PSBA report, there are a few things coming up. I think it's still in February. I will note for board members that still need it, the required training. They've added a bunch to it. So I think they're all in February, but nonetheless, you need to look at that very carefully. And there are a couple new things coming out. Future Ready PA Index and school assessments will be coming out this month. New science standards, it won't take place till 2025. I'm sorry, math standards. I guess it's science and math standards, isn't it? Come out in 2025. And there are new certification rules coming out again. The state's always so sure they know how to evaluate teachers, but that is what it is. Is there a construction update tonight?
We have, yeah, Fred's here.
Yep. Mike is short.
You realize you're anticlimactic at this point.
I think he's okay with that.
So the middle school project, the overall project is 63% complete. Fundamentally, in this type of weather and the conditions, much of the work that's happening right now is interior, although they do remain working on the exterior block and brick veneer, window installation, that type of thing to close up the envelope of the building. Two of the keys right now were milestones will be drying in the buildings. And again, we talked about that a month ago, and we're still not quite there. We have a directive to the general contractor to, with specific dates to get areas of the building dried in, which will then cut loose work for the other prime contractors. The other thing is to get in the floor topping on the precast plank floor levels. That, again, has not started, although they are in the preparation stages of that. So in this brief project status that references that, but the other work that's going on is interior partitions and the mechanical, plumbing, and electrical contractors, prime contractors are doing their rough ends throughout all parts of the building. Site work is pretty much at a hold right now until work that could be performed in the spring. Questions on that?
Amphitheater. I was trying to figure out what that picture was.
Yeah, that's the footings for the amphitheater. It's in the, actually right off of the
front of the
main
building
entrance.
outside.
It was like they're doing a dirt maze for the kids.
Yeah.
That'll be.
Well, that's actually pretty creative digging right there. That
Yeah,
isn't often
absolutely.
done. It's to save form work.
Yeah.
Just simply
Yeah,
form
use the
with the
earth,
air.
why not? Yeah, that's great.
And then it's just, again, depicts the, that's A wing, the windows being, or at least prep for the window installation. There's more to the brick veneer and the stone veneer, along with the yellow portion is the spray on air and air barrier and insulation. A little view of all those components, that some of the roof areas being dried in. Now, these roof areas are not complete, they're just they're to the point where they are dry. And again, that's area D, and for the most part, they are dry there. That is area A, the three pods. That area is dry as they move further to the other side of the building. Questions?
No, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. This is the last time. Is there anyone who has not had a chance to speak that would have any reason to address the board at this point? If not, we'll go on to board comments and initiatives, and I moved this down from earlier in the agenda. That's board assignments, because I don't think we have them so solidified that, we're going to make it sure. I do have just a couple of them open, basically, the CB Regional Rec Plan, which is an ad hoc. We're going to need to add one for policy, because we have a lot of board-directed policies to be done. But unless I'm wrong, I think we have all the others filled.
I do need to talk to you about the construction team then, I'm on that.
Okay.
About meetings, I was made aware of now being on Thursdays and stuff with my CTC board and stuff like that. So I can talk to you afterwards.
Okay.
Just wanted to
That's
give you a
fine.
heads
We'll
up.
wait until we're ready to make
Yeah.
sure before we go any farther on that. The dates for your meetings are, on your update.
And I will not be here next week
You will not be here.
for the retreat.
Okay. We can adjourn if somebody will give me a
So
motion.
moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We are adjourned.